A warm welcome. You're watching RT International with me, Nikki Aaron. Well, anger is running high in the city of Kemerovo, where people have gathered at the headquarters of the regional government. 64 people, including many children, lost their lives in a huge fire that broke out at a shopping and entertainment complex on Sunday. Wednesday has been declared a national day of mourning in Russia. The protesters are demanding answers and justice for the victims. People have been rallying throughout the day, and the crowd has been repeatedly chanting the word truth. President Putin put aside official business and flew out to Siberia. He laid flowers at a makeshift memorial in the shopping centre. He also visited survivors at a local hospital and said that the tragedy brings mixed emotions.
When you hear for the first time how many people died, that children died, you don't just want to cry, you want to scream. But after you hear what's happening here, frankly, you feel very different.
The Deputy Governor of Kemerovo region has been asking the crowd for forgiveness.
Не донести ту боль и то переживание, которое мы испытываем. Я говорю о том, что это общая трагедия. И я говорю о том, что все виновные в этой трагедии будут наказаны. И я еще раз прошу прощения перед теми, кто попал в эту сложную ситуацию. И я становлюсь на колени перед этими людьми. Да не надо это... Тихо, тихо, тихо. Я хочу попросить... Не, стойте.
Our correspondent Igor Zhdanov has been in Kemerovo for us for the past few days. Igor, understandably, emotions are running high. Is the general feeling there one of sorrow or anger?
Well, Nikki, it's a bit of both, I should say. The city is riled up. They are emotional and they want answers. And probably the perfect metaphor to sum up one question on everybody's mind in one way or another is this kid.
Понимаешь, что был пожар, там было очень много нарушений, к сожалению. К сожалению, очень много.
Когда охранник слышал сигнализацию,
он никогда ее услышал, отключил. Опять же, это предположение. Она не работала. Просто мы знаем от тех, кто находился в это время, путем опроса очевидцев, мы знаем, что не было слышно сигнализации. Вот только это мы знаем.
So clearly the emotion here, the emotion level is borderline hysterical. People want to know why the fire prevention system didn't work, why people had to break through fire exits. The very paths that were supposed to lead people to safety were locked, so people had to jump from windows for their lives, running for their lives. They wanted to know why the personnel of the shopping mall was not trained how to behave, how to help people in such an emergency. So instead of helping, they actually hampered the rescue efforts.
I ran upstairs. Cinema staff didn't let me through. They pushed me. My daughter asked me why no one was saving her. I asked the firemen to do something, but they just stared at me.
I ran to the third floor. Firemen stood there doing nothing in front of the door. My daughter told me that she loved me and that she was suffocating. I told her to get down on the floor and begged her not to die.
The children are there. It isn't a matter of how many are dead now. Unless we change something, hundreds of others could die.
No matter how long we stand here, no matter how loud we shout, no one will hear us.
Now, this is, of course, only a portion of experiences inside that shopping mall. Talking to people here, talking to survivors, we know that security guards actually often warned people about the beginning fire instead of a fire alarm. And we've heard some stories of security guards heroically bringing carrying children out of the blaze. Now, another very important thing people want to know here is whether or not the authorities are lowering down the number of the dead in the blaze, because everyone we've talked to, from taxi drivers to bystanders, passers-by, and people who brought flowers to the vigil, they all seem to believe that the actual number of people who died in the blaze could reach 300 and 500 people, and that the authorities are trying to hush it down, so to speak. Now, of course, it is understandable that people are afraid, that people are scared that this will repeat again. They're scared of losing more of their own, because, of course, every person here is living this tragedy, is feeling this tragedy on a deeply personal level. Just to give you an idea, some people went to the morgues to see with their own eyes whether or not the rumors are true. And here's basically the two different points of view on this. Have a listen.
The authorities claim that 64 bodies were found and a few are missing. So numbers are not that high. But no one believes that. Why? Because it was a Sunday. There were a lot of people. It was a school holiday. Free movie tickets were handed out. People arrived on tour buses. That is widely known information.
I was at the morgue on Volgogradskaya Street. There are 67 bodies there. 64 of them from the shopping center, burned bodies. 3 others are not related to that incident. There are a lot of children there. Our city is very small, so everyone knows someone from the hospital or in the emergency services. They may have access to some exclusive list. People exchange information and say that you shouldn't believe the numbers. It's not 64, it's 300. So it creates a chain. Everyone shares it on social media. Messages, video and screenshots appear. But there is a huge possibility that some of the video is not from the shopping center, but from another fire. Some people are exaggerating it. I just couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to find out for myself.
Now, Vladimir Putin, who landed here in Kemerovo early morning, has already laid flowers at the vigil and talked to some of the citizens to comfort them over their loss. He promised the investigation to be as transparent as possible. The deputy governor echoed his words, and the Russian Investigative Committee has filed a warrant, has filed an arrest warrant. So the Russian Investigative Committee is putting under arrest 5 people suspected who they had earlier detained in connection with the blaze. Among them is a security guard, a fire safety chief of the mall, and the owner of the mall. Now, the investigative committee believes that it was the security guard who actually switched off the fire prevention system, and that's why it didn't work. So clearly the investigation is ongoing, and we'll be bringing you more on this.
Igor Zdanov, Igor, thank you for that report. Igor's reporting live from the city of Kemerovo at this incredibly difficult time for the people there. Thank you for your report. Now, the blaze in Kemerovo has been called one of the deadliest in Russia in the past 100 years. Here's a look at the tragedy, how the tragedy unfolded on Sunday.
Наш папа. Данил, выходим к машине, побежали.
Молодой парень, который сидел с нами, он нас сопровождал, помогал.
Никакой сирены, ничего не звучало.
Она мне звонила в 11 минут 5 последний раз. Сказала, что я не могу выйти. Передай всем, что я их любила. Передай маме, что я их любила, и все.
Так, мужики, сейчас точно задохнемся.
Личное
память им всем.
Это очень большое горе.
People in Hungary, Ukraine and Moldova are bringing flowers to their respective Russian embassies to commemorate the victims of the Kemerovo tragedy. In Moscow, St. Petersburg, Novosibirsk and other Russian cities, people have organised vigils. Flowers were also laid at the Russian embassies in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. Here are drone pictures from the scene. It shows the ferocity of the blaze and the scale of the devastation. The surrounding streets are still blocked off and we can clearly see the roof has collapsed. Emergency teams are still working inside the building. RT's Murad Gazdiev takes a closer look at the human side of the story.
These people are tired of those mincing their words, of understating, of keeping information back. This is what these protests in Kemerovo were about. People demanding action, people demanding information, to be kept in the loop, to be kept abreast of the investigation, demanding that those accountable be brought to justice. And when Putin came out, he said that, reading about this, talking to people who had lost loved ones, it makes you so sad you want to cry. It's devastating. And then talking to officials, you get a completely different picture. These people presumably trying to cover their own hides, trying to protect themselves. But Putin didn't mince his words, and he said that those responsible will be held accountable.
Хочется народу, просто хочет, чтобы наказали. Да,
Власть наша.
Так и будет. Значит, мы с вами не будем делать вот таких выводов. Вот прямо сейчас назначать виновных. Но вот эти 100 человек следователей отработают по полной программе. Это точно. Даже не сомневаюсь.
This is a huge tragedy. I mean, this is a small city, and doubtlessly many people will know someone who had lost a child, a son, a daughter in this horrific fire. But the thing with trauma, with psychological trauma, is that people need an explanation. It is part of our psychology. We need an explanation. We need information. We need to have a picture of what is going on. We need someone to blame. And the fire itself began in the arcade room, in the playroom. It began as a result of an electronic malfunction or perhaps faulty wiring, a short circuit. It was either that or the second version, which is that it was an open fire, that it was set. Someone took a light and matches to something, and bang, it all escalated very quickly, though that version is less likely, say investigators. And once the fire began, everything that could go wrong went wrong. The fire exits were locked. They were blocked. The fire alarm system had either been disabled or was broken, malfunctioning, for more than a week, since the 19th. So that was out of service. There was a backup alarm system that security had to press a button and everybody would be aware that there was something wrong, evacuate. That didn't happen. For whatever reason, security did not activate that system. And as a result, you had people, and their first warning that something was wrong is a huge, thick wall of smoke rushing towards them. And smoke is the real killer. It isn't the flames. The body shuts down in the smoke. But the other problem is, and this is perhaps, as a human being, this is perhaps the most traumatizing, is that the doors in the cinema, in the screen rooms, the doors were shut. So all the people inside were trapped. Usually you have someone on the doorman who checks tickets, lets people in. They shut these doors and the doorman left. So once it all began, the room began filling up with smoke, and you had cartoons running in there. Many of the people in there were kids. They can't get out because the doors are shut. And they start calling their mothers, their fathers, begging them to come rescue them. Eventually, it got to the point where you had kids who realized that no rescue was coming, who realized that they were going to die, calling their mothers, their loved ones, and saying final goodbyes. You know, I love you. So it was horrific what happened in them. Earlier, I put together a report about, names and names, numbers and numbers. But when you realize that All of these people were just like you and I. When you get to know them just a little bit, you understand the gravity of this tragedy. But viewers may find some of what we're about to show distressing. For rural youngsters, a visit to the big city is always an adventure. These 12-year-old classmates went to town, and they went bowling, ice skating, to the cinema. It would be their last adventure.
Целый класс был, 11 лет ребятишкам. Весь класс был в кинотеатре. Она позвонила по телефону. Идет дым. Мы никого найти не можем, двери закрыты, и все.
Dozens and dozens dead, but they aren't just numbers. They all had names, lives. All the compensation in the world won't cover their family's loss, especially given that so many of the victims were children. Masha was there with her grandmother. She only turned 10 last week and posted this photo online. Exactly a decade is all she got in this world. Both she and her grandmother perished. Tatiana, an English teacher, she was there with her daughter who survived. Tatiana got her out of the building before hearing that others were still trapped. She went to help rescue who she could, strangers, but she never came back out. You were the best teacher in the world, write her former students. You didn't deserve this. We will all remember you.
4-й этаж, где кинотеатр полностью затемнен, полностью в дыму, все горит, народ весь в панике, дети плачут. Страшно.
Little Ratibor pictured here with his mum and dad. She wasn't with them, but imagine her pain when she had to identify the bodies of her child and husband. Not even surviving is easy. Some say he jumped, others that his father threw him out of the window in a desperate effort to save his little boy before succumbing to the smoke himself. There are too many to mention here, but the point is made. A list of names is one thing, but it's only when you get to know them just a little that the depth of this tragedy really hits you.
We do have an update on the boy who jumped out of a window of the burning shopping mall. He was in an induced coma due to the severity of his injuries, but he's now conscious again. However, he's still unaware that he lost both his parents and his little sister in the fire. Well, meanwhile, donations have been flooding in for the victims. The Russian Red Cross alone has received 14 million rubles. That's almost $250,000 so far.
Yesterday, the Russian Red Cross announced a fundraiser to help out those affected by the incident. People have responded extremely well. They are not indifferent to the suffering of others. As of today, we've raised over 14 million rubles from all over Russia and also from abroad too. We greatly thank those who've contributed.
Of course, we'll be following developments in Kemerovo over the coming hours. A reminder, the fire in the Winter Cherry shopping centre there claimed the lives of 64 people, many of them children. 6 people are still missing. Recovery teams are continuing to work in the burned-out complex in the Siberian city. As that's happening, though, people are rallying in the city centre, demanding answers from authorities. President Putin has flown into the city. He's promised that everyone responsible for the tragedy will be brought to justice.